6 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order. If you would, please stand and follow me with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation from Jamie Roush. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Shall we pray? Heavenly Father, I come before you tonight, and I thank you for who you are. I thank you for your sacrifice, and I thank you for the love that you have for all of us. And I just pray as we enter into this meeting tonight, Father, I pray for wisdom and for understanding and for discernment, Lord, tonight, as we enter into the meeting that would glorify you and raise this city to the level that you have meant for this city to be. I thank you so much for the values that we still hold. And I just pray, Lord Jesus, that you would be all present tonight in everything we do and say. Thank you for your love and your mercy on us all. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Jamie. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Denham. Here. Gaines.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Fenton.
Here.
Whitus.
Here.
C.
Here.
Your Honor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. As we start this meeting, today is a special day. Just a note, today is Tuesday, 2/22/2022. Just think what this meeting would be like in 2/22/2222. I'd like to start off with a special recognition. I'd like to recognize Dominic Haygood as a recipient of the You've Been Caught Citizen Recognition Award for the month of February 2022. Dominic, would you come down, please?
It's the first time he's been caught being good.
Second that.
Yeah.
It is my privilege to announce that the City of Branson's You've Been Caught Citizen Recognition Award for February 2022 is going to Dominic Haygood. This award is to positively recognize Branson citizens and community members whose actions exemplify the City of Branson values and who make our community a great place to live, work, and play. Dominic is receiving this award because of his selfless and kind actions during the recent snowstorm. He was nominated by a 60-year-old woman whose car couldn't make it up an icy, snow-packed hill. After several attempts of her own, which almost ended in accidents, she was crying, scared, and didn't know what to do. Dominic happened to come upon her, parked his own car on the side of the road, got into her car, and drove it up the hill. He then offered to drive her car the rest of the way to her work where she was headed. After ensuring she got there safely, he then had to walk about 2.5 miles back to his own car in the snow and freezing cold. On behalf of the Mayor, Board of Aldermen, City Administrator, and City staff, it is my honor to announce Dominic Haygood as the City of Branson's February 2022 You've Been Caught Citizen Recognition Award. Congratulations, and keep making Branson proud.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy that Branson has something like this to do
Speech.
for the folks in town
Hold on a second.
who help
Why don't you
us.
step up to the mic? What's your name?
My name is Karen Collins, and I work at the Heart Center at Branson. I've been there 15 years. And I come in from Lead Hill, Arkansas, and I was having a hard time one morning getting off the off-ramp. And this kind gentleman just comes up next to me and gets out of his car and helps me and gets me all the way to the Heart Center, walks all the way back to the 65. It's snowing. I was just so thankful when my family's not here in town. They're at home in Arkansas. He was so kind and helpful, and I kept telling him to pull over, and he just wanted to get me safe to work. And I just so appreciate it. And I appreciate that Branson has something like this to recognize our good citizens that help us every day. And I'm just so thankful, and I'm so thankful. Thank you so much, everybody. It's just awesome.
I wanted to take just a couple minutes and just share a little story about myself and my family. So my wife and I, we put on an event for single mothers a couple years ago. And it was an enormous undertaking. Clay and his whole staff were a big part of it, and Heather and I spent a lot of time and resources on it. And it was for three specific women that were vetted by the Jesus Was Homeless group, and the money was specifically going to them to help them get further in life. And after the whole thing was done, and we had spent a couple months on it, running around and doing media and making videos and writing songs and whatnot, it was time to pass out the money. And so we did our best to make sure the money was allotted in a way that was going to be helpful and in a way that would, be able to be useful in the future for them. It wouldn't be squandered, et cetera. And we did that part, and we did our best to invest in their futures. And within about 6 months, we checked in on the ladies, and it hadn't quite gone as we had planned. One of the women had received a car, and it ended up being impounded, and she ended up back on drugs. She had an issue, and she was not able to get over it. The second lady ended up, we paid off her college, her local college bill. She finished it, and she went back to an old lover and kind of fell back into an old life. And the third woman finished college, started her own business, got into a house, got a mortgage, got settled down, met the love of her life, had a kid with the love of her life, and now has an incredible family and has an established life that she's proud of. And I remember talking to Timothy, and he was like, always the optimist. And he was like, well, I mean, that didn't go so well, did it? You guys spent so much time. I was like, well, we can look at it two ways. Yeah, 66% of the people we helped, it didn't work out. But that one woman, we changed the trajectory of her life. It's possible that, with courage and her commitment to her lifestyle, that was the thing that facilitated, a different existence for her for the rest of her life. That was the moment. And for me, and Heather, that's totally worth it. And I think a lot of times, as humans, we battle these thoughts in our mind when we see somebody that needs help. It's, I don't want to get involved. It's going to be a mess. Or what if they don't reciprocate my generosity? Or, that guy's obviously going to waste that money on drugs or whatever else. And those things are all possible and they are true. But for me, it never matters. If you feel the inclination on your heart, you feel God pushing you, your only duty at that point is to respond. Whatever happens after that is God's problem. It's out of your hands. And so I would encourage each one of you, if you have those moments in your life, if a neighbor's struggling or there's somebody at your church or a family member, sometimes all it takes is a hand on the shoulder. It takes a, hey, I see you. It just takes someone to recognize that they're valuable and that they're more than their situation that they're going through, to bring them up out of their current emotional stasis. And there was a lot of people along the way that did that for us. We grew up in a trailer park. We were very poor growing up. We struggled a lot. My dad worked hard. My mom worked hard to take care of us, but there was just never quite enough to go around. When you have 8 kids, there's a lot of resources you need. And I specifically remember coming here in 1993, and there were just moments. There would be one guy out of everybody else who was kind of looking at us like, what are these kids doing? That ain't country music, for sure. I don't know what that is, but, and there'd be one guy just say, hey, keep practicing. You're going to be good. Somebody would just make a comment and encourage us. And that's all we ever needed. We always would hang our hats on those moments. And so whenever we started to have success and we started to build our brand, we could see that it was working, I always vowed that when we would get to that point where we had resources and we could help other people, I would pay it forward. So I would encourage you guys to do the same. If you see my brothers around town, I told them this was a coronation for me into the Hall of Fame, it was a Lifetime Achievement Award, and we're going to have a full marble bust of me out in the foyer. So if you see them around town, just invite them to the ribbon cutting, okay? All right. Thank you, guys. I don't mean to be rude, but the 4-year-old's not going to be interested in what you guys are talking about, so we got to go.
Most of the adults aren't either. Yeah. That's okay.
Thank you for sharing that, Dominic.
Mayor, when I called Dom when I saw this was coming up, and I said, man, congratulations, that's quite a deal. I'm proud of you. And he writes back in the text message, can I get my own parking space now at the theater? He's been hounding me for 8 years, so I think he deserves it now.
I would also be remiss if I didn't share that we have somebody in our audience who initiated this You've Been Caught award. It was a Branson resident. His name is Gino. He's sitting up here. I'd like to give him a round of applause for starting. While we're on awards and recognitions, I received an award. It was presented to me as the mayor. However, it's not my award, it's the city's award, so I'd like to read it to you. It's from Ozark Water Watch to the city of Branson in recognition of your sponsorship, commitment, and dedication to improving water quality in the Ozarks. Thank you for helping us have cleaner water together. That's great. We'll put this in the office. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
This is the public comment section of the Board of Aldermen meeting. At this time, the board will hear the citizens who have signed up in the order they are listed. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers tonight?
Yes, we do. Our first speaker is Rick Davis, 914 Cliff Drive, Branson, Missouri, speaking on governance.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Nice to see familiar faces in the audience tonight. A lot of interest in our community. That's a very good thing. With this end in mind, my purpose here tonight is to promote and ensure good governance in our city. As chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, it is my duty to make sure the commission reviews and approves or denies all applications that come before us with an unbiased lens based on what is allowed by statute and city code. I sent correspondence to Administrator Dobbins, Assistant City Administrator Manning, with concerns about actions of current City Council representative on the commission. I asked for a change to be made to the council's representative to the commission at the next appointment date. This usually occurs in April or May of each year. I've been told that this correspondence is before you, been shared with you, and you have it. It fully explains the reasons for my request. Our job as commissioners and aldermen is to be fair and impartial when determining recommendations to the council. We should operate in an environment that is honest, open, and legally sound in order to serve the city of Branson and her citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Madam Clerk, any other speakers?
Our next speaker is Amber Thompson, 113 North Sunshine Street, Branson, speaking on safety concerns.
Yeah, thank you. You're okay. Yeah, I volunteer with my nonprofit, Grassroots Civil Defense Coalition. Everybody knows that. I just wanted to give you all some quotes and statistics and some concerns that I have that are very serious. And as Mr. Haygood, Dominic Haygood, was awarded for his, helping out single mothers. They are some of the victims here in Branson area and many other places in Missouri. 7.7% of Missouri residents are reported to have illicit drug use, and national average is very similar. And what we're finding is that the managers that are places in these hotels, et cetera, in Branson and other areas, they will favor drug addicts into the point of putting them into management positions. Now, these are rarely ever single mothers, and they will have a lot of times men and even female-dominated type careers, such as housekeeping, taking their place. And so we see there's a lot of discrimination of single mothers there. We also want to, again, keep safety in place. And when you have drug-addicted, chemically impaired, brain-damaged individuals who are working as managers, they're the number one communication source if there's a problem at a hotel. So that includes if it's a tourist making a complaint, if a housekeeper runs across a suspicious activity, they'll want to have that reported. So a lot of times you'll have a lack of communication, fabrications, false documentation, things not reported that should be reported because you have, again, managers in place who aren't willing to expose it. And this area, there's not a lot of crime, but we kind of are known to potentially, not just us in particular, but I'm saying other places that are more rural and wooded, forested, to have undercover missing people potentially disappearing. And there's always been suspicion of police interaction with that, whether it's state police or local in these small communities. So one of the things that was brought up to the Office of Chief Justice through the National Missing Persons, through our organization, was they may want a blood protocol when there are blood stains or anything suspicious activity to be reported. The National Council on Crime Prevention says that there, suspicious activity, number one, should be reported, and if it's at least communicated. And what we're getting is, and literally, I can personally witness, and I've got an attorney looking into it, but again, we out of this area, because that's another problem, we don't have attorneys to take cases. Because I did have to report by security on a hotel staff here in town that I needed to contact the police locally. So what happens, the resident of Branson will contact the police, and they'll say, get an attorney, right? No crime is committed or proved a lot of times. So if there's employment discrimination, like in my part, where, it was basic witness retaliation, it should have been communicated. But the number one reason it wasn't communicated, I believe, is because I'm known in this area for being a single mother, so they were discriminating against me, number one, so they weren't willing to take anything, to hear anything from me. They were risking our safety, having the assistant manager who would show up, who'd admit to us, even these young 20-year-old male employees and female employees, that he was up all night, every night he'd been drinking. He drinks, I said, oh, he probably didn't drink too much, though. He goes, oh, no, I drank so much, as I'm about to kill myself sometimes. And he's driving around, he's operating, vehicle equipment like golf carts, et cetera. And he's known to have been in drug rehabilitation. He said, oh, yeah, I was in there. And, he goes on and on about it, bragging about it to his staff. And, I mentioned the police. I said they really need to make it to where, if we have to communicate with other politicians, that's one of the reasons I bring these issues up too, is because if there's politicians in the room or someone who knows someone, they communicate these ideas. Secondly, off the subject, but another safety concern is, I'm very thankful, Larry, that you're the mayor, because we don't need hospital board administration, such as Mayor Akers was in that office, because it's a conflict of interest. I have 42 seconds, so. We have DNR. If you don't want to be resuscitated at the hospital, you can put DNR on your file. Right now, they should have an acronym NOV.
30 seconds.
No, thank you, for no operative ventilation. Because my friend, who's a federal corrections officer, I believe was killed because he was not receiving the right type of medical intervention, which would have been a stent of some sort for his cardiac issue that caused his breathing concern. Because 80 to 90% of breathing concerns are not due to COVID or pneumonia or anything else of the lungs, but it has to do with the heart. So I appreciate your time, and if anyone could put those in consideration of having some sort of a council meeting where not with the council members, but with the rest of us in the city to meet and talk. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Madam Clerk?
Our next speaker is James Justice, 1014 Cliff Drive, Branson, Missouri, speaking in planning and zoning.
Jim?
Mr. Mayor, council people, I'm here tonight because last Saturday I was reading the local newspaper, and I read that a letter had been sent to the appropriate city dealing with planning and zoning, and I read on through it. It listed exactly what it said, and said that, and then it became apparent that someone from the city had turned that over to the local news media. And it appeared from the interview that the news media called the head of the planning and zoning, says, "What's your response to this?" And then the other person that was considered in there had given a written response. And then the mayor said, quoting him, and says, "Well, this, I believe in openness and fairness. This needs to be placed on the agenda." And I'm here because, Mr. Mayor, it's absolutely the wrong place and the wrong time for this. These are personnel issues that should be taken up in private. It should be worked on in private. It should be talked about it, and it should not be. I mean, if these are serious accusations on both sides, they need to get to the bottom of it and look at it. But pleading a case or doing something in public the way it's done is the worst way in the world to do it. Now, when it's all said and done, at that point, you can have your transparency that you want. But so that's why I'm here. And the other thing is, it appears that someone, either on the behalf of some staff of the city or some city person or someone, turned this over. And if you don't have some type of regulation within your rules and regulations for your department heads and other things about turning these things, private conversations or complaints, over to the media before they're addressed by the city administrator, the city attorney, or the rest of the council people, you need to do something. So that's the only reason that I'm here. It's my understanding that you may have decided that that's the way it's going to be tonight. You're not going to take this up. If that's the case, other than what we've talked about, then I'm through, and I'll go back to my church meeting that I have tonight. But thank you very much. So please, let's all learn something from this, and let's do it properly.
Jim, excuse me, I'd like to address some of your concerns. In my opinion, I think our community has asked many times to have more transparency at City Hall. I think when there's distrust between the community and the city, it's because they feel that decisions are being made behind the scenes, if you will, and the community is not involved. I felt very strongly about bringing this up in public because we're dealing with an elected official. This is somebody who has been elected by the community to represent them. And if nothing else, the community, I think, the voters that voted for Ruth to be here, I think they deserve, our community deserves to hear everything about this. And when something is sent to the aldermen, I'm more of a proponent of sharing that, having open discussion, and having the community educated.
Well, Mayor, with all due respect and I applaud you for your decision, but you're wrong on this. This is a personnel issue, and very serious charges could be alleged or were alleged, and it needs to take place in the proper form at the proper time instead of put out before. If I were the planning and zoning person, and all of a sudden I get the local newspaper calling me up, well, what do you do about this? I would be very upset. But notwithstanding any of that, on this particular case, in this particular time, your intentions, they may have been well-founded, they were totally and absolutely wrong, in my opinion. And I'll bet you that your city attorney is telling you the same thing at this point. This is a personnel issue. It needs to be resolved privately until it's time to come to the public. So,
It's okay.
What?
Yeah, we can't talk, we can't have a conversation here. Amber, we can't have discussion, please.
Well, I knew when I saw her here, we'd get into that, but that's another time, another place.
That's right, that's right. Thank you for sharing your
Okay.
opinion. I have mine. Thank you.
All right.
Madam Clerk, do we have any other?
Our next speaker is Cherry Webster, 118 Country Bluff Drive. She's speaking on Alderman Fenton's comments on 2/8/22.
Good evening, Mr. Fenton. I'm here tonight to address questions and statements that you made at the last meeting on February the 8th. You challenged my representation of Country Bluff residents by asking if I served on the Country Bluff Property Owners Association. You asked if anybody else from the neighborhood was here that serves on that board. You challenged my use of the words "we," Country Bluff, and "us," as Alderman C. was sitting over there nodding yes, yes, yes. You also stated, "I've not seen your board here. In fact, the last time board members were here, they resigned the same week." You are missing so much information. Let me start with the board member that came before this body June the 8th, 2021. What didn't he tell you? He didn't tell you that 2 days before he spoke to you, the Country Bluff POA board removed him as president. He didn't tell you that in another 2 days, there was a community meeting scheduled to vote to remove him completely from the POA board. That's when he resigned. What else didn't he tell you? He didn't tell you why he was removed. As an official representative, you can only treat people like dirt for so long, refuse your obligation to represent them, and then mute them when they don't agree with you. Eventually, things come to a head. It did, and he was removed. Our community had the same issues as with the city. Elected officials that refused to represent us and instead represented the interests of the developer. The removed POA president chose to represent his household and not the 106 households in the subdivision. He chose to represent his personal interests and the business interests of the developer, only he wouldn't tell anybody that. Month after month, he refused to fight for our property rights regarding the buffer and the stormwater basin. When he was challenged on the Facebook group that he created and moderated, he just muted any challenger for 2 weeks and 4 weeks at a time. I was muted 3 times. After 9 months of his disservice to Country Bluff, I posted 4 reasons on why he should be removed from the POA board. For that post, he permanently removed me from the Facebook group. After our community endured him for a year, elections yielded 4 new board members. But on the Zoom POA meetings he moderated, he would mute their audio when he didn't like what they were saying. Then the removed POA president got mad at 3 board members when they would not sign an agreement to support Ruta's offer to not put a road through Lot 35 onto Country Bluff Drive and to not build anything on the lot other than a single-family home. Well, what about addressing the buffer and the basin issues? There's nothing in the agreement on that. He got furious when those board members required a community meeting to gather input from other residents. At that meeting, he shouted the F word to a lady who asked a question he didn't like. When 2 men stood up to defend her, he threatened to call the police on all of us. 2 days later, he was removed as POA president. After that meeting, he permanently removed from the Facebook group everyone that was in attendance. 2 weeks later, the board and the community volunteers came together so well that we decided to take advantage of every public forum available to us to present our case, since we were getting nothing but excuses from the city for why they wouldn't do anything to help us. That's when it was decided that Cherry Webster would take the lead in the interface with the city. At the monthly POA meetings, there's an update on the current RUTA issues. After the hearings, emails are sent to the board, the POA board, and the neighbors that are active in the community that provides the video link and timestamps of the proceedings that are pertinent to Country Bluff. We have established the roles of the board and the volunteers, the flow of information, and all has been working quite well since the POA president's removal. So, I don't need to be on the board in order to volunteer my time and effort, nor do I need to take up a board slot that someone else could fill and add their talents to the community.
30 seconds.
Our current board members and neighbors have been to numerous P&Z and Alderman hearings since last May. Sometimes they come, but they don't speak individually. When they have spoken, they haven't always identified themselves as a board member. 2 of our board members are so COVID averse, you won't be seeing them here anytime soon. Our president has a monthly travel schedule that conflicts frequently with the hearing schedule. You will continue to see me speak before this body with or without accompanying POA board presence, but I will be representing our community's interests and property values. That's what we established, and we're continuing on with that approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Madam Clerk?
Gregory Gerard, 602 Cherokee, Branson, Missouri, speaking on zoning.
I'm basically here to speak. I'm the party that was named in this leaked letter. It's the one that applied for a special use permit. And so I'm basically here to speak the truth on Ruth Denham's. This letter basically stated that she was biased and that she misled my wife and I on what to do. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. I've never even met her personally, other than talk to her on the phone. A friend of mine that's sitting in here, Randy Davis, knew of my dilemma. We'd called several aldermen. None of them called us back. So he asked her to call us. And she led us through the steps. Everybody in zoning was great, but they didn't lead us through the steps. We had no idea what was coming or what to do. Ruth didn't say one time that she was going to vote in my favor. She was just going to lead us through this and help us out on the information. And can I ask a question? Was that Mr. Justice that was just up here? I don't know the man. He drives by my house like a bat out of hell every day. I've only glanced at him. But he got up here a minute ago, and it kind of caught me funny. Talks about this thing can't be released. Well, he signed a letter of the Hiawatha Heights Board with very many mistruths in it about my business at my house, which is basically slander. So I don't know. I don't know where you draw the line. I guess the power overrules good sometimes. But Mr. Rick Davis, should not have been allowed to vote at the zoning. It was a direct conflict of interest. I lived right next door to Mr. Beadle that made this complaint. Him and Brian are good friends. They run around, they go shoot trap, different things together. I witness it all the time. And he should not have been allowed to vote. So that's something you guys need to take into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Greg. Madam Clerk?
Deanna Slatton, 187 Lone Pine, Branson, Missouri, speaking on health safety.
This is the first time I've ever done this, so I just wanted to say I'm bringing forth some issues that I'm seeing in the public and around and about. What I am seeing right now is issues with the PCR test, ethylene oxide being in it. It's a carcinogenic. Most health agencies are bringing this forward. It's causing sterility in females. My daughter has been hit with this. She has the progesterone level now, she's 23 years old, of an 80-year-old. She's had 2 PCR tests. My husband has had multiple PCR tests. He is now having freak seizures and freak fevers. So the thing is, I'm wondering, is there any other issues coming forward from other people? Does anyone know if these issues are happening? Is there an investigative team on the Branson Council that is keeping track of these kind of things? Number one, there's other things that's going on with the vaccines. There are embalmers coming forward saying there is strange clotting going on with the people that have died that have taken the vaccines. Now, I'm not saying this just vaccinated people dying, because that's not what's taking place. What is taking place is other people are dying that are not vaccinated. Also, Stanford University is bringing forward HIV with the vaccines. There's concerns about AIDS going on with the vaccines. This is something I don't want to talk about, but it's something that needs to be talked about in the public. This is a health and safety issue with people, and I love people. I don't know about you guys, but I love people, and I don't want to see people getting killed over something that can be prevented. Now, I've had COVID myself twice. Never been vaccinated, but I have had it. So it's not just vaccinated, unvaccinated people. There are other issues that are hitting the people and the public that needs to be known. There is 5G. You might think I'm crazy, but if you do your research on 5G and COVID and in other countries, you will find out that where there's 5G, there's COVID. So these are things that I'm wanting to know if Branson, Missouri is bringing these things into an investigative realm with hospitals, with blood banks, for crying out loud. I mean, if there's HIV possibilities, do we need to be taking blood from vaccinated people? These are my concerns as a citizen. I hope they're your concerns also. And if you could give me somebody that we could talk to build some kind of investigative team with numbers that we can reach out to the public with. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanna.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for her, please. She mentioned the PCR test, Deanna. Yes. What is the affliction one more time?
It has ethylene oxide in it. It's a carcinogenic.
Is it in your neighborhood? I guess that's my question.
Well, it's in the PCR test. Now, there's several tests that it is in, but I don't know if that's in our community, if those are in our test, in our hospitals, things of that nature. I don't know. But these are things that I have researched, and I've been researching this for a very long time.
Thank you for answering that. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
That's all of our speakers.
Okay, well, the next is the consent agenda. Are there any items that any member of the audience would like to have moved down from the consent agenda or ask additional questions or comments? Any items the board would like to have moved down? Madam Clerk, would you please read the items on the consent agenda?
Your Honor, the items on the consent agenda are as follows. Approval of the Board of Aldermen minutes for the February 8th, 2022 regular meeting and February 10th, 2022 joint meeting. Acknowledge receipt of Planning Commission minutes for the January 4th, 2022 study session and regular meeting. Final reading of Bill Number 6129, an ordinance accepting the proposal of Delorado LLC for replacement of pool grading materials for the Aquaplex and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6130, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with the Branson Lakes Area Chamber of Commerce and Convention and Visitors Bureau for tourism and marketing services and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6131, an ordinance approving the renewal of the contract with Hood and Associates, CPAs, PC, formerly Cochran Head Vick and Company, PC, for auditing services and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. Final reading of Bill Number 6132, an ordinance amending the adopted 2022 budget for the City of Branson to adjust monies in various funds to increase wages for all employees, a 4% increase for all full-time employees to include administration, directors, and assistant directors, and a 7% for all other full-time city employees. Final reading of Bill Number 6133, an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Section 353 of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to competitive bidding required exceptions. Your Honor, that concludes the reading of the consent agenda. The floor is open for a motion to approving all items on the consent agenda.
We have a motion and a second. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak to this? Any board member, any further comments? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 6-0.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the next item is a review of a letter sent by Commissioner Rick Davis.
I will give this staff report. When I first read this letter, I did take it very seriously, primarily because it was addressing an elected official. I felt it was important to have these discussions in open public. I've heard so many times that the community would like to be more involved and not less involved with the city, which is the spirit of why I wanted this on the agenda for an open discussion. We will, actually what I think I would like to do is I'd like to hear from the board what their opinions are and what their feelings are regarding the letter from Chairman Davis. And we'll start at this end. Jeff, Alderman C., do you have any comments on this?
No, I don't.
Seems odd, I heard a lot of comments.
From where, from me?
Yeah, I mean, you seemed to share a lot when we were sitting with Stan on our 1 or 2 meetings.
Are you calling me out, or what are you doing?
Alderman Whitus, do you have any comments?
I don't have anything at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Fenton?
I think our acting city attorney has weighed in on this. I reviewed some correspondence. I think, personally, when I saw the letter, these are serious allegations. I think we owe it. I agree. We owe it to the citizens to look into this, and I think we owe it to everybody to look into this in the correct way. I think our acting attorney has advised us there is a correct way to do this because of the, and I'll defer to Jim a little bit here, but because of the nature of sunshine law, the scope of this agenda item tonight I don't think is broad enough, is my understanding. So in other words, I do think we should look into this, and I think we should ask questions, and I think this is something that should be taken serious given the nature of the allegations. And so I think our advice was, and I'm always just one to follow advice I get. Our advice was to set this for a special hearing for this specific purpose. Still a public hearing, but a special hearing for this specific purpose where if somebody feels like they need legal representation or what have you, we can go about this the right way because of some of the implications here. So I don't think it's something we just ignore the advice of our attorney and just go about it this way, but that's my 2 cents.
Well, for clarity, I believe our city attorney, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, after this discussion, what I will be looking for is for this board to choose, do we want to proceed and move forward on this? Or do we want to not proceed? Is that correct, Jim?
So you have several different issues presented here tonight, but the item noticed on the agenda is a discussion of Commissioner Davis's letter. You could entertain motions concerning that letter and whether you wished to proceed with a special meeting or something else to examine the allegations contained in that letter. You could also do several other things with respect to that. Choose to do nothing, choose to table it to a later time. Additionally, to take any action on the allegations of the letter would require a special meeting during which the individual who's accused in that letter would have due process rights and the opportunity to argue on her behalf, to present witnesses if she chose to, and to be assisted by legal counsel if she chose to. But this board couldn't have that hearing tonight. It could vote to schedule such hearing, but consistent with the due process rights of everyone involved, it would need to do so at a time and place that would work consistent with the due process rights of the individual that is accused in the letter.
Thank you, Jim. So my understanding is, after this discussion, I will ask for a motion whether this board wants to proceed or not to proceed in this action.
And that's my point. I don't know how we don't proceed. I mean, it's out there now. It's in the public. In the interest of, you brought this forward for transparency. I don't know how we don't. I mean, if we don't look into this, if we don't take the time, if we don't go through the process and we just say, let's ignore it, never mind, then I think that contradicts the point of you having it on here. So I think the train's moving down the track, so to speak, and I don't know how we have any other choice but to proceed that way. But again, that's my 2 cents, and I'm just one vote.
Okay. Alderman Cooper.
As of now, these are all allegations, right? I mean, has there been any proof to show that these are, I mean, the gentleman that lives in the neighborhood, the cabinet maker, I can't remember your name, sir, but.
Mr. Gerard.
Huh?
Mr. Gerard.
That's right. Mr. Gerard just stated that Alderman Denham did not tell them that they would get the pass or whatever, that he just stated that. So I mean, he said, I really wish Mr. Rick Davis was here to speak. I'd love to hear from some more of the commissioners. I see a couple of the commissioners here and their thoughts on this as well. I watched the meeting on February 1st. I did not see Alderman Denham out of line whatsoever. I mean, she asked questions just like everybody else asked questions. And it appeared to me from just the tone of Mr. Davis's statements every time he addressed Alderman Denham that maybe he doesn't care for her. And if that's the case, you can't remove somebody because you don't like them. I mean, there's a lot of people I probably don't care for and I'd like to remove, but you can't just kick them out because you don't like them. So, maybe we do need to. There's a lot of allegations out there, like Alderman Fenton said. So, I mean, we're at a point now where what do you do? I mean, does it turn into a trial, or I mean, we get witnesses and this and that, or how does this proceed? Because again, I watched the meeting, and she asked questions just the same as Commissioner Nichols asked questions, and Commissioner LeBlanc asked questions, and everybody asked questions. And personally, I didn't see her get out of line. Obviously, this is more than just that meeting. I mean, am I correct there? Or is this all about this one meeting, or is this stuff that's happened down the line? I mean.
Well, when I read the letter, if I recall, Commissioner Davis had 3 specific examples And the third example in his letter was the February
Right,
1st meeting.
yeah. So there was other things as well, but, and I can't attest to that because I've not attended any of the planning and zoning meetings, so I don't know what's happened with those, but I'm just saying the meeting I saw, it doesn't warrant what he's requesting to remove her because I didn't see that she was out of line whatsoever. Again, I have not been to previous meetings, so I don't know how deep this runs, but I'm just basing it off what I saw on the video, and I just don't see it there.
Thank you. Alderman Gaines?
I have to disagree with my friend here a little bit. I don't think we need to be having any further discussions on this tonight. I think it all should be wrapped up in one special meeting for discussion to protect the rights of Ruth. As I'd stated before, I didn't think this was the right way to do this. Allegations are made and things that are said and reputations are dealt with from one side to the other. And Branson's real bad about the vine. Things just pass very fast in this town, and people say things. I think that we should follow the attorney's thoughts on this. I think we should follow exactly what Cody had said, that we need to make a motion to put all this stuff together in one special meeting and either affirm or deny the allegations. But I don't want to see it done piecemeal and done in here and drag these people through it and anybody else or the other commissioners through this. This is not the time and the place. It should be done in a special meeting, and it should be open. I do agree. It should be open. And I would make that motion.
Ruth, any comments?
Well, I've been falsely accused of some things and putting it out to the public. And I'm sure there's people that are here that, I'm sure that there are citizens here that, my thing's stuck, that came to speak. When I took an oath to support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Missouri. All the provisions of all the laws of the state affecting citizens in this class, and the ordinances of the city of Branson. And I have no problem faithfully demeaning myself in office. I feel that I have, when I make comments, I bring out the Branson Municipal Code. I'll refer to the state statutes, and I do my research, and I refer to case law. So I feel I have been very falsely accused, and that went out in the newspaper, and the slander that's taken place over it appears to me too, a personality conflict. Every single one of the commissioners on the Planning and Zoning Commission have opinions. I mean, that's why they're there, so we can have an array of differing opinions. And I'm sure that they are not being misled by me. I'm sure every single Planning and Zoning Commissioner refers to the Branson Municipal Code, refers to the state statutes. They don't look to me for answers. If they do, well, I don't think that's the best choice. I feel we have a professional board. I enjoy working with them. Things aren't always going to be peachy keen, but we do need to focus on the issue, not on people. Thank you.
Well, my opinion is I have attended one P&Z meeting. I have listened to 5 P&Z meetings online. And the one example that Chairman Davis had referencing the February 1st P&Z meeting, I heard a lot about it. And then after watching it, I was really taken back at the accusations made towards Alderman Denham In fact, I'm gonna go on record and say, if anybody has watched that video of February 1st, in my opinion, Alderman Denham, during the entire meeting, said exactly what I would expect a planning and zone commissioner to say. To the extent that I would want every single alderman to respond the way Alderman Denham responded in that meeting. I would be disappointed if aldermen on the P&Z commission did. Alderman Cooper called me and asked a question that I had asked myself. After Alderman Cooper watched the meeting, he called and said, "Am I watching the right meeting?" Because he didn't see anything that was out of line or inappropriate that Alderman Denham commented on. So I wanted to hear from this board how they felt, because it does feel like we watched two different meetings. I will say that in one example that Chairman Davis gave, I thought was just very inappropriate. So I was hoping in this meeting we would hear from this board on how they felt and if they felt this even deserved to proceed. So with that, I would like to get comments from the audience. Anybody wishing to speak to this?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to circumvent this and make the motion that we stop this discussion right now and have a special meeting for this in all fairness to Alderman Denham.
I don't hear a second, so is there anybody in the audience wishing to comment?
Second it.
We have a motion and a second. A motion from Alderman Skanes, a second from Alderman Fenton to discontinue any discussion on this topic.
And to hold a special meeting for this in order to defend the rights of Ruth Denham.
Are you doing this for Ruth?
It's the right thing to do.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. With that, you want a roll call vote?
Can I just clarify that we have a motion on the floor to stop the current discussion and have a special meeting of the fairness of Alderman Denham?
Excuse me,
Correct.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
May I please? I do not want to have a special meeting. I do. That's not what I would like at this time. I feel that there are people here that came to speak on an item on the agenda, and I would like to publicly hear what they have to say. Thank you for considering me, Mr. Skanes, Commissioner Skanes, Alderman Skanes, but my wishes is not to have a special meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just as a matter of procedure, Alderman Denham can't participate in the vote on whether the meeting is discontinued and a special meeting scheduled because it involves her personally. She does have a right to defend herself if a meeting is called, but at this point, with the motion on the floor, I would advise that she recuse. She can do whatever she wishes, of course.
Okay, thank you for that, Jim. So we do have a motion and a second. Lisa, would you prefer a roll call vote? Vote on the,
It's ready to vote.
Mayor,
But
yes.
may I, go ahead, I'm sorry. Before we vote, I would like to make,
Sure.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to ask the city clerk if she could just read that again, just so we're clear how we're voting on this.
I have a motion to stop the current discussion and have a special meeting out of the fairness to Alderman Denham. Now, when we're ready to vote, if I may, just to remind what we have on our books and in our code, if we have an abstention, that will be a no vote. So that will cast a vote for Alderman Denham in my records. And so.
She
So-
does have to abstain from it, but the way the code is structured is the way it's structured.
So it will show that she voted no if she abstains.
Does the mayor vote in this?
Only in the normal circumstances if there
tie.
was a tie.
Mayor?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
excuse me again, please. This is not about guilt or innocence, so I would just request that this be discussed publicly. It's an item on the agenda, and people came either to speak for or against. And I would appreciate you considering me in that. Thank you.
Alderman Gaines, would you want to amend your motion
No,
based
sir.
on?
I think, in all fairness to her, she should recuse herself out of here and not be caught up in a no vote where it looks like she did. Again, all fairness to Ruth, and I call for the question.
Your Honor, or Alderman Gaines, if she recuses herself, that's abstaining, and it would be cast as a no
Well,
vote.
if she left the room, it wouldn't, right?
That would be an absent, and that would be her choice to leave the meeting and be recorded as an absent.
Even though Ruth's requesting to hear from.
I don't understand that. I mean, it's the topic
Mr. Mayor,
is.
I've called the question.
Your Honor,
We're discussing it.
Your Honor, a
I
call
call
for
the
the question is a motion. I need a motion on the floor for a call for the question and a second and a vote on the call for the question.
So move.
Second.
Who's second, please? Thank you.
Okay, so to follow procedure, against my preference, there's been a motion and a second, a call for the question and a second, no further discussion, we'll now vote.
So
Jim?
if you will just let me voice vote because I've got another vote up on my system.
Yeah, so, and that's why Lisa has another vote on her system. You are voting on the question. So this vote is to terminate all further discussion on the motion and proceed to vote on this motion.
So I'm going to, if you'll allow me, please, to do a roll call vote on that because I have a computer vote up on the other motion sitting on the floor, so.
For clarity, Jim, we're voting on the
call for the question.
for the question, which means if this call for the question is defeated, then there can be further discussion.
On the pending motion,
Yes,
which is Alderman Gaines's motion.
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. You're on.
For the call for the question, I'm calling roll call Alderman Denham.
Abstain.
That will be recorded as a no vote. Alderman Gaines,
Yes.
Alderman Cooper,
No.
Alderman Fenton,
Yes.
Alderman Whitus,
Yes.
Alderman C.
Yes.
That motion carried 4-2. So we are calling for the question, which will mean that we are opening the vote up on the motion of Alderman Gaines. That was to stop the current discussion and have a special meeting out of the fairness to Alderman Denham.
Correct.
And so I'm going to open that vote up electronically, and please vote. That motion carried 4 yes votes, 1 no vote, and 1 abstention. That would be Alderman Denham is an abstention, which will be recorded as a no vote. Alderman Skanes voted yes, Alderman Coover voted no, Alderman Fenton voted yes, Alderman Whitus voted yes, and Alderman C voted yes.
Mayor, I'd like to, I've heard some
Excuse me, Bill.
comments, and I'm going to talk. I'm going to talk. I've heard you all night long.
Excuse me, Bill, you are
I'm
out
go-
of order.
no, these people will have
Alderman
an
Skanes,
opportunity.
you are
Why
out
don't you just
of order.
Just stop for a while. Quit politicizing. This whole thing tonight is we're going to allow people to be able to talk at the special meeting. To give it any type of other angle outside of that is just wrong. You all will get a chance to talk.
Mr. Mayor, could I recommend that maybe we take a recess for just a little bit?
I think that's a great idea. We're going to take a recess for 7 minutes so we can have cooler heads will prevail. Thank you. Be back. I call this meeting back to order. Madam Clerk, I believe we're on item 9.
Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6134, an ordinance approving the contract with Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield for net cost funding and authorize the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6134.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll get a staff report from Jan Fisher.
Mayor, members of the board, this is an agreement that normally would have been with the Anthem contract that you approved last fall. However, the paperwork wasn't ready in time and such like that. This agreement gives the city an opportunity to recoup some of its premiums if the claims to premium ratio is favorable in our respect, in respect to a certain amount that Anthem will set. They currently have not set that amount because it involves a level fund that it's kind of like level funding, if you will, where they set a reserve. And if our claims and all the other additional expenses come in less than our premiums, that difference could be refunded to us, or a portion of that difference could be refunded to us. There is no cost to the city for this, and there's a possibility that we get money in return. I'll answer any questions, and staff recommends approval.
Jan, when I read that document, I had a couple of questions. First, do you know when they'll set that amount?
I do not know that. They typically set it before the end of the current calendar year, or the claims year, if you will. And then once they set that amount, they'll come back 160 days following, or 180 days following, 6 months following. They will then review the claims and then give us an opportunity to either draw down that money or apply that money to premiums.
Is there a risk, any risk to the city that if our claims are higher, that we'll be paying an additional amount?
No, sir.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Any questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 6-0.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6135, an ordinance approving a contract with Mitchum Tire Company for the purchase of tires and tubes and authorizing the mayor to execute the contract. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6135.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll get a staff report from Keith Francis.
Mayor, members of the board, good evening. This is our yearly contract for our tire purchases for all of our fleet and our vehicles. Several years ago, we went out to bid for this, and Kimberling Tire was the state's low bidder. This will be coming off the state's contract also. Since that time, Kimberling City has sent us a letter stating that they will be closing their doors February 25th of '22. And will not be renewing their contract with us. The low bidder on the state contract in 2019 for Bridgestone tires was Mitchum Tire Company, and the bids for each of the specific tires. Due to the locality of the office, the same purchasing without having to drive to Springfield, and cooperative bid with the state of Missouri for Bridgestone tires, staff recommends approval or purchase of commodity state contract with Mitchum Tire, which is located here in town. and not to exceed amount of $67,500 for the dates of April 1st, 22 through March 31st of 23. The contract with the state of Missouri includes one additional successive one-year term. Funds are available in the 2022 Public Works Transportation budget to cover the cost. Staff recommends approval and be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from members of the audience? Any questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote. Thanks, Keith.
That motion carried 6-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6136, an ordinance amending Chapter 90, Section 38, and Appendix A of the Branson Municipal Code pertaining to late charge, disconnection for non-payment charges, disconnection at customer's request. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6136.
We have a motion and a second. We'll get a staff report from Jamie Rouch.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is really some code revisions to help streamline our processes for the utility billing and when the guys go out for disconnection and stuff like that. Right now, currently, they go out and hang blue notes and they have to go to the doors, and obviously there's some risk involved in that. And so this is an effort to help streamline that process, to have a little bit more protection on our guys, and also for maybe an upcoming contract that's going to be coming before the board with Public Water District Number 3, I believe next meeting. So the changes really are, we changed the first notice that we send out, so it's typically 10 days after the billing date. Now it is going to be 5 days, and we send out that first notice without attaching a late penalty onto it. So we're changing from 10 days to 5 days, and then the next one, we're doing an additional 10 days after that. And instead of doing the blue notes where they have to physically take them out and hang them on the doors, we're going to do a certified mail in that manner. And at that point in time, we'll attach a $13 penalty on that. We typically do the $13 penalty for that. So that's not changing. We just merely, in that ordinance, we changed it from what we called a posting charge to a notification charge. All the penalties are about $13. And so it is still the same time frame, so essentially it's 22 days after the original bill goes out will the disconnection proceedings begin. But we just tried to streamline it, clean it up a little bit, do a certified mailing instead of the blue notes to help out the guys streamline that process as well. And staff does recommend approval of this. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from the audience? Questions from the board?
How is that first notice sent out again?
It's a mailing, and according to this, we're changing it to 5 days after the date instead of 10. It used to be 10. We're going to do it 5 days now.
Thank you.
Jamie, what is the, and you might have said this and I
Sure.
didn't hear it right, but what is the cost difference with a body putting a note on the door versus a certified mail?
So I did not say that. So certified mailing is about $6.75 per, and we did not calculate the staff time to do it because it changes based on the disconnect notices and stuff. So I'm sorry, I don't have that information. We can try to do some analysis, but it will vary from month to month.
Well, it'd be hard to nail down. I mean,
It
you're
would
looking at
be,
an hourly
yes.
person and how many houses he hits in an hour.
Yes.
And yeah. Okay,
Yes.
I was just curious. So 5 days, and then 10 days after that fifth day comes that's when the letter's sent?
Yes, sir. So it's 15 days after the due date. So after 5 days after the due date, we send the original notice. And then an additional 10 days after that, or 15 days after the due date, is when we would send the certified mailing if the bill has not yet been paid.
And when does the disconnect come?
It would be 22 days after the date of the original bill.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jamie, has that 22 days changed?
It's typically been 22 days. What's changed is, like, it would be 10, and then another 10, which would be 20, so we kind of shifted it around, but it's typically 22 days.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carries 6-0. Your Honor, the next item is the first reading of Bill Number 6137, an ordinance amending the adopted 2021 budget for the City of Branson to adjust monies for the mandatory redemption, waterfall, debt service payments, and transfers in various funds. The floor is open for a motion to approve the first reading of Bill Number 6137.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll get a staff report from Jamie Rouch.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. This is 2021 amendments, so we're closing out our year, drawing this up. So what I would like to bring before you are budget amendments for the mandatory redemptions. And what I will say is excess tax receipts according to the bond documentations. Some of the bond docs require that the excess tax receipts go for a mandatory redemption, which just means we pay the debt down faster, okay? So this is a really good thing for those mandatory redemptions. It means we brought in enough revenue and tax receipts to go to that next level of the waterfall for our debt. So you have some in the Branson Hills for the 2005A, the 2007A, the 2017A for the Branson Shops, the 2017B for the Branson Shops.
Excuse me, Jamie.
I'm sorry.
Chad, can we put this bill up on the board? Go ahead, Jamie.
I'm sorry. Okay, and then we have for the 2005A IDA Branson Landing, of which I will note, that one is the TDD for the Branson Landing, and that one's gone farther than it has in the past, so that was good. So we got more tax revenue ins. We were able to take another step, pay that debt down a little bit. The next one is the waterfall, which is the there is a 3 bond step process for the Branson Landing. So you have there's a waterfall flow of funds in those documentation. It says if you meet this step, then you go to this next step. So we have a bucket of revenue. The revenue meets this step, and then you pay for this step, and then this step, and it goes all the way down. And if it hits that next step after we paid those other steps, then we get to, for the third bond debt, which is that 160 fund, we get to roll the rest of that amount over into that debt, which says it gives us more money to pay off the third debt, which is good. This hit 1.8 million this year, which that's the highest we've been able to roll off the other 2 debts onto the third debt. So what that says is that we got a lot of tax. Everybody knows that 2021, we've got a whole lot of extra tax receipts in. Now, there's a lot more to say about that, so I won't go into that. But we got a lot of tax receipts in for the Branson Landing. And so we were able to hit more steps and a higher amount to roll off to pay the debt. With all that being said, the mandatory redemptions, the waterfall steps, those budget amendments, that's a good thing because that just helps us pay down that debt faster. The third one is that economic development TIF. And if you recall in 2021, we hadn't had that separate fund set up yet. So this is an accounting for that fund to account for the expenses to be transferred out for that TIF. So that is what all of those budget amendments are for, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Jamie, am I correct when I say, what I heard you say was, these extra monies that are going to these bonds, that is reducing the principal amount of those bonds, correct?
Yes, sir, that's a mandatory redemption. Yes, sir.
So it's required, which I think is a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
Any
in that
excess
documentation.
dollars that come in go directly to reduce the debt.
Based on the bond docs, yes, sir, that's exactly how that works.
Would you briefly share under waterfall the transfer from other fund, the 1.8 million?
So it goes from that 165. So if you look at the 165 fund under that waterfall, you see 165-1095-510-9160. Okay, that 165 represents the Branson Landing debt fund. So what is happening is that 1.8 million is an expense out of the Branson Landing, so it's a transfer to other funds. And it's going into that 160 fund, that you see the 160-0000-499, that is a revenue on the other debt fund. That other debt fund was what we used to call the Branson Meadows TIF fund. And if you recall, that TIF closed in 2018. So what happens is we still had debt associated with that because there was a combination of some other things wrapped up in that debt. So that money gets to roll off onto the Branson Meadows TIF fund, and that's money that we get to contribute to the debt for that bond as well. So 160 represents what we call in our department as the Branson Meadows TIF fund. The 165 represents the Branson Landing TIF fund. So you're going out from one fund and into another fund. That's what that means. Transferring out from one into another.
So the 1.8 million, was that the taxes generated from just Branson Landing?
That was the landing, and so based on the waterfall structure for the debt, you have several steps you have to meet. And then once you've met all those steps, then the leftover amount from that revenue rolls off onto that third debt. Does that make sense?
Where does the Branson Meadows TIF fall into this?
That Branson, it's based on your debt structure and how that debt structure works, because the Branson Meadows TIF was associated with that third bond. It was the 2011A bond. When the TIF went away, there was still a debt issue against that because some of the Branson Landing land was wrapped up in that debt issue. So that's how it's all wrapped up in that bond indenture for the waterfall flow of funds. That's how we have our guidance on what we have to do.
Okay, for clarity, all of the tax money, 100% of the taxes that's generated from Branson Landing goes to reduce the debt on Branson Landing. Branson Hills, 50% of the taxes go to the bond to reduce the debt. The other 50% comes to the city, county ambulance, right?
Yes, sir.
The Branson Shops debt was 50%. And so is the, I see, I think, okay, now I see that. So I just want everybody to be have the knowledge that when we've passed these TIFs in the past, some of the TIFs were a 50-50, 50% goes to the debt at Branson Landing, and I know they had a banner year. I mean, I've seen some of their preliminary numbers. So it just, all we're doing is reducing the amount of debt.
That's what we're doing. Yes, sir.
Anybody in the audience have any questions on this? Any members of the board? Yes.
Just a clarification for me. The Branson Shops TIF that has expired, wasn't it the corridor, or was it actually just the Branson Meadows Mall?
It was the Branson Meadows. No, it extends further than the mall. But I could get you a map because I'm afraid I will misspeak on that. But yes, it extends further down from just that little mall.
But it was land just on Gretna.
And then the debt was, the way the debt was structured, it was that TIF debt, and then there was some refinancing along the way. And then it wrapped up into a 2011 bond structure, which also included some of the land, which is how all of this debt structure and the waterfall flow of funds came to be. I mean, if you're interested, I did a nice little flow chart on that several years ago that might help you.
What was part of that motive was when Knott's Berry Farm was coming here?
I can't talk about the motive because I wasn't here, so if anybody
I'll
else
talk
was here
about
that
it
want to
then.
speak to, y'all go ahead.
That was the motive, so, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from members of the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Your Honor, the next item is disbursements. The floor is open for a motion to acknowledge the receipt of disbursements from December 3rd, 2021 through February 11th, 2022.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, let's vote.
That motion carried 6-0.
Next, we move on to Alderman reports, and we'll go down the list, starting with Alderman Denham.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to state that I feel it's very condescending for others to say, we're doing this for your own good, while my feelings were totally ignored. My feelings on the issue were totally ignored. I saw so much of this taking place, the shushing of people for the last 3 years, technically. More important than my feelings, though, are those of the citizens that came to speak at this meeting. Citizens have been shushed and shushed and shushed for far too long. It's not transparency, and it is not fair to our citizens to shush them, regardless of what you have to say. I don't know what some of you might have had to say, but I feel it's fair that you should be given that opportunity. This should be a place where our citizens can walk in and make comments and feel that they are welcomed, not that they have to get so upset because it's just yet another meeting where people are told to pretty much shut up. Their opinions don't matter. All of your opinions matter to me. They matter very much to me. I ran on transparency. I will continue to stand up for those rights. I thank you very much for attending this meeting. I'm very embarrassed on how you were treated, and thank you very much.
Alderman Skanes?
Yes, sir. There was no shushing tonight. We were following the attorney's guidance that gave us to move forward to make sure that we didn't violate any state laws or ordinances. We followed those to the T. Everybody will have a chance to speak at the special meeting. There are some legalities involved. There would have been some violation of sunshine law, and we just have to come down to the point to understand that there's certain ways that are things that are done, and we got to do it right, and we have to do it legal, and we have to open it up for this next special meeting, which I disagree with her on, that everybody will have a chance to speak. It'll be run very similar, but it'll be run by the law and by the rules and regulations set forth by the state of Missouri. And that is things that we did say that we swore to do.
Alderman Cooper?
Well, the topic was Alderman Denham, and she wanted to discuss it, so I don't know why anybody else would have a problem with it. If she wanted to discuss a topic about herself, I just don't get it. And I also think that there was many people here, whether they were going to support Alderman Denham or oppose Alderman Denham, that if they would have known they were going to be shut down, they probably would have got up and spoke during public comment when they had the opportunity. And then they didn't have the opportunity because it was shut down. So I'm just disappointed that I could get it if Alderman Denham said, I really don't want to talk about this tonight. I don't think it's the proper place. Let's please do this in another setting. She was begging to discuss a topic about herself, and we denied it, and I just think that's disappointing.
Alderman Fenton.
Well, it's probably also worth mentioning, some of us didn't even want this item on the agenda. That part was overlooked tonight. I didn't feel it was appropriate to even put it on the agenda. But nevertheless, there it is. Our attorney, our acting attorney, gave us advice, and I think we would be foolish to not heed that advice. And so I understand, and I don't think anybody's being hushed. There will be a public hearing on the advice that we received. This was the way to do it. And so I know that wasn't the popular thing to do tonight, but that's the advice we received, and I think we have no choice but to follow that advice. That's why we have a city attorney. So that's all I got.
Alderman Whitus.
Nothing at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman C.
If it were me in Ruth's shoes, and I know we're focusing on her, but listen, I had a lot of problems with what went down at that meeting. We've got an enforcement officer that was implicated. I want to question, Stan's not going to like this, but why we even recommended approval of that? Those are the reasons why we needed to take
Alderman
more
C, would you
time
speak in your...
and ask questions about, everybody's focusing on Ruth. I would focus on the process. There was a lot of mistakes made in that process, and they weren't from her. There's a lot of things that happened that I would want to question. And if it was me, and I was afforded due process, be able to subpoena witnesses, present evidence, and state my own case, I'd rather do that in a controlled setting than basically where this was heading here this evening. There's more issues here than pointing the finger at Ruth. That's my comment.
Administrator Dobbins.
Mr. Mayor, tomorrow, the woman that I have loved pretty much my whole life and has put up with me, tomorrow will be 37 years. I'm publicly telling the world I love her more than I ever did when I met her. And I'm also publicly saying that if we had a little more love in the world, maybe we could talk and communicate better with one another. But that's my report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Congratulations, Dan.
Happy anniversary, bud.
Well, I'm going to say publicly that excuse me, I disagree with Alderman Gaines. In the correspondence that I have had with our legal, from our attorney, I felt it was appropriate to bring this in the open. Again, we're talking about an elected official. I did not hear from our legal counsel that we cannot have discussions. In fact, that was the purpose of putting this on the agenda, was to hear discussions. So I too apologize for those that showed up, hoping you would have your voices heard tonight. I'm embarrassed that you didn't. The intent of tonight's meeting was to see if there was, what the feeling of the board was, if we wanted to even proceed with this process. So, saying that, we will proceed with the process. And we do stay within the laws, we stay within our confines, we rely on our legal counsel to provide that. I'm very impressed with our new interim attorney as far as the level of knowledge that he has and the advice that he gives the board. With that, happy 2/22/2022, Tuesday. Accept a motion to, we need a motion to go into executive, is that right, Lisa?
Yes, correct.
Accept a motion to go into executive session.
Your Honor, I move to go into closed executive session pursuant to 610.021.2 RSMO for real estate and 610.021.3 RSMO for personnel.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
That motion carried 6-0.
Any chance I can get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of adjourning, please vote. Vote.
Who motions? Second? Thank you. All in favor of that motion to adjourn? Alderman Cooper?
Yes, ma'am.
You're good to adjourn, right?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought y'all did an eye count. Yes.
Thank you. The meeting's adjourned.